Marcus had lived at the apartment on Cavendish Road for 3 years, and he had a specific relationship with his front door key. Not a sentimental relationship. He was not a sentimental man. A practical one. Over 3 years, and perhaps 1,000 uses, the key had worn a groove in the side of his right index finger that was visible if you looked closely, a small compression in the skin from the precise way he always held it, thumb on one side, index finger curled under the bow, the same grip every single time. His hand knew the door before his mind did. The angle, the pressure, the fraction of a second's resistance before the barrel turned. So when he put the key in the lock at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon in November, and nothing happened, he knew immediately that it was not his error. The key entered the lock correctly. It simply did not move. The mechanism had been changed. A locksmith's work, precise and complete. He stood on the step with his travel bag over his shoulder, and he knocked. A woman opened the door on a chain, 4 inches of gap, and through it Marcus could see his hallway, his floorboards, his coat hooks, 3 of them. The middle one slightly higher than intended because the wall had hidden a beam. His botanical print from Bermondsey Market in its place to the right of the hooks. His hallway, occupied by a woman he had never seen. She told him through the chain that she had been the tenant at this address for 14 months, that the letting agency had arranged it, that she did not know anyone named Tom Hesse. She closed the door. Marcus called Tom Hesse from the pavement. The number was not in service. He called the office. The receptionist searched the staff directory. No Tom Hesse. He gave a description. Nobody matching it on the current staff list. He called the letting agency. They had no record of a Marcus Hale. He booked a hotel 3 streets away and sat at the desk and opened his laptop with the methodical focus of a man who has decided that the opposite of panic is documentation. He found the tenancy agreement in the folder he kept labeled Admin Flat, opened it, his address, his dates, his rent amount, a name he did not recognize at the top. He right-clicked the file and opened its properties. The document had been created 3 years ago. It had been last modified 4 days ago at 11:42 in the morning while Marcus was sitting in a glass-walled meeting room in Edinburgh presenting a quarterly summary to 12 people who had shaken his hand at the start and offered him coffee at the end. Someone had accessed his device remotely and changed his name on his own tenancy agreement while he was 300 miles away with witnesses. He printed his bank statements, 37 months of rent paid from his account to the letting agency's sort code. He photographed the file properties window showing the modification time. He put all of it in the inside pocket of his coat. Then he went to bed. Not because he was calm, because tomorrow required clarity, and clarity required sleep. and Marcus had always been the kind of man who understood what tomorrow required. In the morning, he went to Gerald's door. Gerald was 71 years old and had lived in the building for 11 years and had helped Marcus carry a sofa up 2 flights of stairs and stayed for a beer afterward and talked for 2 hours about a cricket match that had ended before Marcus was born. Gerald left his door slightly ajar on weekend mornings so the cooking smell could reach the corridor. Gerald knew Marcus the way neighbors know each other when time has made familiarity into something warmer. Gerald opened the door and looked at Marcus with the open, inquiring expression of a man looking at a stranger. Marcus watched Gerald's face. He watched it carefully, looking for the flicker, the small movement that meant something was coming back. A name, a face, the sofa, the cricket. Nothing came back. Gerald said he was afraid he didn't recognize him, that the flat upstairs had been a young woman for over a year, that he was sorry. He closed the door with the gentle firmness of a man who wishes he could be more helpful and cannot. Marcus stood in the corridor for a moment. Then he went back to the hotel, sat at the desk, and began to think very carefully about what he actually knew versus what he was assuming. What he knew. His name had been removed from his tenancy agreement. Tom Hesse did not appear to exist. His letting agency had no record of him. His neighbor did not recognize him. What he did not yet know: who had done this and why, and what his apartment had been used for in 43 days while he was in Edinburgh, living in a furnished flat near an office and thinking about nothing except the project. The envelope appeared under the hotel room door at 10:37 that morning. He heard the dry whisper of paper on carpet and looked up from the desk and sat for a moment before he stood. He opened the door. The corridor was empty. The envelope had his full name on it in a handwriting he didn't recognize. Precise, slightly backward slanting. Inside, a single page, a formal document with a reference number and a signature field requesting Marcus to confirm in writing that he had never resided at the address on Cavendish Road and had no claim against the current tenancy arrangement. At the bottom, handwritten, "Sign this and everything is restored. Your name, your file, your agreement, your neighbor's memory. Don't sign it, and we continue." Marcus read those last 4 words, "your neighbor's memory," 3 times. It told him something he had not known until that moment. Gerald's failure to recognize him was not accidental. It had been arranged. Whoever had done this had spoken to Gerald, had told him something, shown him something, planted a version of events thorough enough to overwrite 3 years of genuine acquaintance. He photographed the document. He put it in his coat with the bank statements. Then he called his solicitor. He told her everything from the beginning. She said,
Do not sign anything. Come this afternoon. Bring every physical document you have. He said, I need to go to the letting agency first. She said, Marcus. He said, I'm not confronting anyone. I want to look at the person who runs the office. I want to see their face when I walk in. There was a pause. She said, 1 hour. Then come to me.
The letting agency occupied the ground floor of a narrow building on Whitmore Street, 8 minutes' walk from Cavendish Road. It had the particular aesthetic of offices that want to appear trustworthy. Framed certificates on the walls, a large monitor showing a property listing carousel, 2 desks with young staff members who looked up when Marcus entered and produced the automatic smiles of people trained in customer management. He asked to speak to the manager. The manager came out from the back office. He was perhaps 55, with the well-maintained appearance of a man who understood that credibility was partly a matter of presentation. He was wearing a dark suit jacket over a pale shirt, and he was already composing his expression into the warm, professionally concerned look of someone about to deal with a difficult inquiry. He saw Marcus, and for exactly 1 second, 1 second before the professional composure reassembled itself, his face did something it had not intended to do. It recognized him. Not the recognition of a manager seeing a customer he vaguely remembered. Something older and more specific than that. The recognition of a man looking at a problem he had calculated would not return for several more days, and finding it standing in his reception area in a coat with bank statements in the inside pocket. Marcus saw it. He saw it clearly in the 1 second before the warm professional smile arrived.
He said, My name is Marcus Hale. I have a tenancy agreement at Cavendish Road. I believe you have some records you'd like to discuss. The manager said smoothly, I'm afraid I don't have a Marcus Hale in our system. Perhaps there's been a... Marcus put the bank statements on the desk between them. 37 months. The letting agency's sort code and account number on every line. His name as the paying party. He put the photograph of the file properties beside it. Last modified, the time, the date. 4 days ago. He said, You accessed my device remotely and altered my tenancy document while I was in Edinburgh. I have a room full of witnesses who can confirm where I was at 11:42 on that morning. I have 37 months of payments proving I lived at that address. And I have a document pushed under my hotel room door this morning that I believe you sent, which explicitly references my neighbor's memory as something that can be restored, which tells me that whatever you said to him, you said it deliberately, and you know exactly what you said. The manager was very still. Marcus said, I'm going to my solicitor in 45 minutes. You have until then to decide whether I arrive there with this conversation having happened or without it.
The manager sat down. He did it slowly, the way a man sits when he has run through the available options and found all of them unsatisfactory. What he told Marcus over the following 22 minutes was this: he had been doing it for 6 years. The scheme was straightforward in its mechanics and depended entirely on two things: a letting agency with access to tenancy records and tenants who traveled for work on predictable schedules. When a tenant like Marcus, single occupant, regular travel, sublet friendly, came through the agency, a flag was placed on the file. When that tenant arranged an extended absence, the flag activated. A colleague who had never existed, Tom Hesse, a constructed name with a constructed email address and a constructed employment history, was introduced as a sublet contact. The real tenant's name was removed from agency records. The property was quietly listed under a shell tenancy to provide a legitimate address, and for the duration of the absence, the address was used. Used for what? Marcus asked. The manager said, financial accounts, credit applications, company registrations. A legitimate residential address held by a legitimate-looking tenancy is worth a great deal to people who need one but cannot obtain one through normal means. 6 years, 11 properties, tenants who were away long enough and organized enough not to notice the gap until they came home, at which point the document waiting under the hotel room door had, on 9 previous occasions, resolved the situation cleanly. 9 previous tenants had signed. 9 previous tenants had received their identity back and their neighbor's memory corrected and had, the manager said, found the whole thing easier than the alternative. Marcus said, "Who are the other 10?" The manager said nothing. Marcus picked up his documents and left. His solicitor filed the police report that afternoon. The case took 4 months to build properly. It involved the Financial Crimes Unit, a forensic accountant, and the records from 6 years of shell tenancy registrations that the manager had, with the catastrophic overconfidence of someone who had never been caught, kept in a secondary filing system on the agency's own server. The manager was arrested on a Tuesday morning in March. 2 associates who had provided the remote access to tenants' devices were arrested the same week in different cities. The 11 properties were identified. The financial accounts opened using those addresses were traced. Marcus's tenancy agreement was restored. The woman who had been the secondary tenant at Cavendish Road, who had, it emerged, known nothing about how the arrangement had been obtained and was herself a victim of a different strand of the scheme, was rehoused by the agency's insurers. The lock on the front door of his building was replaced with the original mechanism. His key turned in it on the first attempt, on a Wednesday afternoon in February, with the cold still in the air and the plane trees still bare above the street. He went upstairs and unlocked his flat. He stood in his hallway for a moment. The floorboards, the hooks, the middle one slightly higher than it should be, the botanical print from Bermondsey. He went downstairs and knocked on Gerald's door. Gerald opened it, and this time, immediately, without effort, without the searching blankness that had been on his face in November, Gerald said, "Marcus, good Lord, I heard there'd been some business with the letting agency. Come in. I'll put the kettle on." The manager, in the statement he eventually gave, said that what he had told Gerald was simple, that Marcus was a previous tenant who had left under difficult circumstances and had been making harassing contact, that the agency had a restraining condition in place, that if Marcus appeared, Gerald should not engage with him. One lie, delivered by a man in a suit on official-looking agency letterhead to an elderly man who had no reason to disbelieve it. 3 years of genuine familiarity overwritten in one conversation. Marcus sat in Gerald's kitchen with the tea and the autumn light coming through the window, and Gerald talking about a recent cricket match, and he thought about how little it costs to remove a person from their own life if you had the right institutional access and enough patience. He thought, it cost one lie, one official-looking letter, one phone call to an IT associate who could touch a file from 300 miles away. He thought, and it cost them everything in the end because I came home 4 days early. He had changed the Edinburgh train on a Tuesday morning because he wanted to sleep in his own bed. A small, domestic decision, the kind that does not feel like a decision at all. Gerald filled his cup again. Outside, the plane trees were beginning to show the first pale green of early spring.